They discovered Nebuchadnezzar's shocking final moment. Did a mysterious repentance occur? Few knew what truly happened that night in Babylon. The great king, ruler of vast lands, stood trembling in the shadows of his palace. His heart pounded in fear, and sweat dripped down his brow. This was not the mighty Nebuchadnezzar the world knew, the conqueror of Jerusalem or the builder of glorious temples. No, this was a broken man, wrestling with something unseen that in the dim light of his throne room, strange whispers filled the air. The aged stone walls seemed to echo with voices of the past. People spoke of dreams, nightmares that held secrets too terrifying to bear. Just days before, the king had stood tall, adorned in royal garments, a powerful figure overseeing the sprawling city. Yet now, he was a shadow, consumed by visions that left him gasping for breath. What did the dreams mean? Was he losing his mind, or was there a force beyond comprehension at play? Babylon, a city of splendor and excess, was at the heart of this turmoil. Its towering ziggurats scraped the sky, glimmering gold in the sun. The streets buzzed with life, but inside the palace, uncertainty brewed like an approaching storm. The advisors who once surrounded him, the wise men and interpreters, now looked at him with fear. They whispered in hushed tones, exchanging glances thick with horror. What could they say to a king breaking under the weight of incomprehensible visions? Nebuchadnezzar's once steadfast rule had begun to waver. He was haunted by a vision of a colossal tree, vibrant and tall, providing shelter to countless creatures. It was majestic until an order rang out, "Cut it down." The command echoed in his mind, a cryptic message that rattled his very soul. What did it mean? Who would rise, and who would fall? These questions tormented him that he could feel the chill of dread wrapping around him. The unease settled in his stomach like a stone. Something was coming. A reckoning. A warning. He was terrified yet strangely drawn to the possibility of redemption. What if there was more than just punishment awaiting him? A chance to repent? But how could King Nebuchadnezzar admit his flaws? Would he dare to seek forgiveness from a god he had ignored for so long? In that moment of hesitation, a flicker of hope ignited within him, battling the consuming darkness. Could it be that salvation lay within his grasp? But the walls closed in, and doubt threatened to drown him. As he gazed into the flickering candlelight, shadows danced, mocking his turmoil. Who would stand by his side in this pivotal moment? Would the mighty king embrace his vulnerability, or hide behind a facade of strength? And what awaited him if he chose the path of repentance? Questions hung in the air, heavy with significance. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Nebuchadnezzar sat alone on his grand throne, the weight of his crown feeling heavier than it ever had. The echoes of his own thoughts reverberated within the cavernous hall, overwhelming the silence that shrouded him. He was a king who had tasted glory and conquest, yet now found himself entangled in the throes of a deep spiritual battle, a contest of identities and beliefs that raged within. The visions continued to claw at the edges of his sanity. They were not mere dreams but haunting reminders that pierced through the layers of his regal demeanor. "Cut it down," echoed in his mind, entwining with memories of his own ambitions. Nebuchadnezzar remembered standing among his people, reveling in their applause, the conqueror who spared no city in his pursuit of greatness. But these dreams, their message was about more than just his fall from power. They warned of a severing from the divine. Each day in the palace grew heavier with the burden of unasked questions. His heart felt like a leaden weight, yearning for something yet fearing the implications of what might be discovered. As sunrises turned to sunsets, visibility into his own soul became a beckoning mystery. Was it pride or ignorance that kept him from recognizing a greater hand at play? Yes, he had worshipped the idols of Babylon, knowing not the God to whom Daniel had pointed him. Soon, whispers floated through the corridors, rumors stirred by his absence and uncertainty. His counselors sensed a shift in the air, a desperation that had nothing to do with power struggles. They trembled not out of fear of ire, but despair over the fate of their sovereign. In their hearts, they wondered, could they, too, find the strength to rise above their own fears and still serve their king? Then came the night when he could bear it no longer. He sought solace in the terracotta rooftop gardens of his palace, a sanctuary draped in vines, adorned with blossoms that once captivated his heart. The night wrapped around him, enveloping him in a tender shroud, and the stars twinkled as if whispering ancient secrets meant for his ears alone. There, amidst the fragrance of night jasmine, Nebuchadnezzar spoke aloud into the darkness, "Is there a way back from this abyss? Can the proud be humbled, and yet find grace?" Questions spun like the night wind, fleeting yet eternal. He closed his eyes, recalling the words of Daniel, the Hebrew prophet whose God offered visions yet gave mercy. "Lord, if you are real, reveal yourself," he implored into the empty expanse. It was a moment rife with vulnerability, the admission of his own frailty in a land he had once believed was untouchable. But as he poured out his heart into the night, despair began to mingle with curiosity. What if his surrender would not bring only judgment, but an embrace? Yet the answers remained buried under the rubble of his heart, a clandestine treasure waiting to be unearthed. In that stillness, the shadows around him began to grow bolder, taking on forms that wavered and danced, hinting at mysteries yet unveiled. What truths lurked beyond the veil, ready to spring forth in confrontation and enlightenment? With hope emerging from the depths of his turmoil, Nebuchadnezzar's resolve solidified. He sensed an invitation woven in the tapestry of his fears. It was not an end he faced, but a turning point. Where would this path of uncertainty lead him? What would it reveal of his soul, and the nature of the divine? Would the king's quest for understanding bring a new beginning, or deepen the chasms of his despair? The night's silence pressed against him, urging him toward an encounter that would reshape all he thought he knew. As Nebuchadnezzar lingered in the silence, the cool night air seemed to pulse with a life of its own, an invitation to delve deeper into the shadows swirling around his heart. The bittersweet fragrance of jasmine mingled with his anxiety, creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation. Here, away from the throne, he wondered if the grandeur of his rule could ever mesh with the humility he was being led to consider. He looked up at the stars, awash in their heavenly glow, contemplating the ancient wisdom that spoke of a creator beyond the horizon of earthly power. Could it be that the same hands that fashioned the universe cast a watchful gaze upon him? The thought teased a flicker of recognition. Just as he had commanded countless faithful to bow before his statues, was it now he who needed to kneel? Filled with trembling uncertainty, he began to whisper the words he had never thought he would articulate. "God of Daniel, if you hear me." He paused, feeling the weight of their implications. "Forgive my arrogance. I have walked in pride and ignored the fullness of who you are." Each word fell into the darkness like a stone, creating ripples in still waters. Was it possible to be so far from grace and yet find it flowing back like a river? His supplication trembled in the quiet, a fragile thread woven into the fabric of the cosmos. That sacred space, a deeper longing uncoiled within him. Nebuchadnezzar's heart was caught in the currents of sorrow and yearning, drawing him ever closer to the truth he had evaded. The vision of the great tree, once a source of anxiety, now beckoned to him with an unexpected tenderness, a symbol of strength intertwined with vulnerability. He realized that it was not merely a warning of destruction but an invitation to reconnect with something greater than himself. Just as he began to feel the ominous weight of despair ease ever so slightly, he was struck by a thought so profound that it sent shivers coursing through his being. What if his kingship was not taken from him, but offered back in a different light? Would he be more than a mere ruler, but a steward of divine truth? The stars blinked overhead, and for the first time, he felt less alone. Was it the encroaching dawn, or the haze of understanding that dawned upon him? Suddenly, the world around him seemed imbued with a restless energy, vibrating with truths yet unfathomable. He pondered the stories passed down, how the ancients spoke of powerful figures who had encountered the divine and returned changed, delivering guidance to their people now bathed in the light of understanding. Would my people listen? He wondered, fear titillating his heart alongside hope's persistent pulse. Was it not the role of a king to elevate the common man, guiding them toward enlightenment? Their struggles mirrored his own fears, the shadows of pride clouding their paths to wisdom. The garden around him grew still, almost reverent, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. A golden hue enveloped the landscape, echoing within him a promise of new beginnings. Could the rising sun mark the end of a season of darkness in his soul? And yet, as uncertainty lingered in his thoughts, a haunting question rose to the surface of his contemplation. If he embraced this divine reflection, would it shift the foundations upon which his kingdom stood? Would the people follow a king transformed, or would they resist the revelation that shattered their perceptions? With a heart trembling in both fear and eager expectancy, Nebuchadnezzar stood upon the precipice of a revelation that frightened yet exhilarated him. How could something so profound, so repulsive to his pride, bring about a renewal? And at what cost would this newfound clarity come? As the first rays of light touched his weary face, sending shadows dancing across the garden floor, one thought lingered: was the path to true wisdom paved in humility, or would it demand the unthinkable sacrifices of a king? As dawn began to break with its gentle warmth, Nebuchadnezzar felt a radical shift beneath the surface of his soul. It was as if the sun itself, with its illuminating presence, dared him to acknowledge the truth within. The golden light shimmered through the leaves overhead, flickering like the heartbeat of the universe, inviting him to step boldly into the light he had so often shunned. Yet, in that transformative moment, the echoes of his past actions clamored for attention. How far had he strayed from a compassionate heart? He recalled the faces of those who had suffered under the weight of his decree, the cries of the oppressed that had weaved through the corridors of his opulent palace. The stories of those lost in the shadows gnawed at him, each a reminder of the price of unchecked ambition. What if he had truly become the tyrant that his enemies claimed? The stillness of the garden became a sacred space where his thoughts unfurled, revealing the chasm that existed between the man he was and the man he longed to be. He envisioned the people he ruled, their lives suspended under the edicts of his hand, and a pang of sorrow struck him. The revelation was both freeing and terrifying. Could he, a mighty king, choose a path of genuine humility? In that fragile moment of clarity, Nebuchadnezzar wondered if the very tree in his dream, the towering symbol of prosperity, protection, and dominion, was an extension of himself. It loomed large and imposing, yet the vision hinted at something softer, an unseen network of roots that connected it to the earth, a whisper of invitation to seek sustenance not in power, but in service and care. That he knelt there on the cool ground, surrendering to the longing that burned within. His fingers brushed against the soil as he grasped the gravity of his revelation. God of Daniel, he murmured again, if there is still time for change, guide my heart. Let my reign be a reflection of you, not of my own ambition. The words glided from his heart, their weight carrying the sincerity of his spirit, an ember igniting within the depths of his being. But as he embraced this resolve, doubt tangled itself amidst his hopes. Could he genuinely begin anew, or was he tethered to the very past he now sought to abandon? The images of the fiery furnace flashed before him, a testament to the unyielding faith of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their courage in the face of his fury a stark reminder of his failed judgment. But now, the fear of his wrongdoings was accompanied by the flicker of possibility. Perhaps it was never too late to lead differently. The silence of the garden deepened, as though waiting with bated breath for his next decision. The air itself seemed heavy with anticipation. As the shadows of the night withdrew, their lingering presence urged him to confront the hidden reality of his leadership. How could he reconcile his past actions with a path of righteousness? What would it mean to lead his people with a spirit reborn? With each breath drawn into his lungs, he felt the burdens of pride and fear lightening, a release of what had once chained him. Yet, lurking just beneath the surface was the question that haunted him: if he chose to change, how would his courtiers react? Would his transformation bring about a revolution, or would it sow discord among those loyal to the crown but blinded by ambition? As the sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the earth in its embracing light, Nebuchadnezzar rose to his feet, a figure both shaken and resolute. The path ahead was cloaked in uncertainty, fraught with the echoes of past missteps and the promise of a newly forged identity. Could a single act of repentance reshape the destiny of a king and his kingdom? What lay beyond the horizon of his transformation, and was he truly prepared to pay the cost? With these questions hanging in the air like the morning mist, Nebuchadnezzar took a deep breath, ready to emerge from the shadows of his reign. Yet still lingered the shadow of uncertainty, pressing upon him with its quiet inquiry, would he find support in his people? Or would the weight of his past be too heavy to carry into a future illuminated by grace? As the sun continued its ascent, painting the kingdom with hues of gold and amber, Nebuchadnezzar turned away from the familiar confines of the garden, his heart pounding with newfound resolve. He felt a stirring, an inexplicable pull towards the throne room, where the symphony of politics and power intertwined, each note saturated with the voices of his faithful servants and the whispered ambitions of those who surrounded him, but as he walked, memories of the past shadowed his steps. Each courtesan who once bowed at his feet now seemed to rise up as phantoms, voices echoing his every decision, the wise men who had soothed him with their flattery, the chieftains whose loyalty hung on the threads of fear. Would they recognize his desire for genuine change or mistake it for weakness? The question loomed over him like a storm cloud, heavy with the weight of impending rain. As he entered the throne room, the air was thick with expectation, his ministers and counselors clustered like moths around the flickering flame of authority. Their faces reflected the uncertainty that lay beneath the surface of their loyalty. Nebuchadnezzar took his place on the elevated dais, his heart fluttering like a trapped bird, and summoned the courage he had found in the solitude of the garden. My loyal subjects, he began, his voice echoing through the marble expanse, trembling yet earnest. I stand before you not as a king consumed by pride, but as a man seeking to humble himself before both God and you. I have wronged many in the shadows of my ambition. The word stirred a flicker of confusion in the faces that surrounded him, a mix of respect and skepticism playing out like an unspoken drama. His heart raced as he continued, each syllable a step deeper into the unknown. The glory of my kingdom was built upon the backs of those I failed to see, those I chose to overlook. Today, I ask for your understanding and your support as I endeavor to lead us differently. Silence enveloped the room, the air charged with both disbelief and the flickering hope that such a revelation could be more than mere words. Yet, as Nebuchadnezzar spoke, he caught the eyes of one of his foremost advisers, a man named Belteshazzar, who had once saved him from grave folly with his wisdom. The young man's clear gaze pierced through the veil of fear and ambition that clouded the hearts of many. In that moment, Nebuchadnezzar sensed a quiet invitation. It echoed the very call he had felt in the garden. Could this advisor be a guiding force in his quest for a righteous heart? After a brief pause, Belteshazzar stepped forward, concern etched on his face. Your Majesty, acknowledging our failings is but the first step. True change requires actions that reflect that acknowledgement. We must translate your words into deeds that will bring healing to your people. They crave not only a king who speaks of repentance but one who acts upon it. The truth of his words struck Nebuchadnezzar like lightning, bearing the raw nerve of leadership. The path of transformation, so enticing in the soft light of dawn, now appeared as rugged and steep as the cliffs that bordered their kingdom. Implementing this newfound approach demanded unfathomable courage, and the stakes had never felt higher. His thoughts drifted to the three friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whose faith had stood undeterred against his wrath. Perhaps they had embodied the very principles he now strove to embrace, but amidst the flickering hope lay a deep and unsettling doubt. What if the tides of change were met with resistance? Would his actions spark a renaissance among his people, or would they provoke an uprising from those who profited under his previous rule? The uncertain future concealed its intentions like a locked treasure chest, awaiting the key of courage to unlock its potential. As his gaze swept over the murmuring assembly before him, Nebuchadnezzar's heart trembled with the awareness of all that was at stake. Here was a moment of vulnerability, a bridge to a new beginning that stood on the fragile foundation of faith. He could feel the gravity of his past pushing against him, yet deep within, a trembling resolve urged him forward. Could it be that in this moment of truth, before the very men who had thrived under his reign of fear, he could plant the seeds of change? As he stood poised to act, the question lingered heavy in the air: could a king who had once embraced tyranny truly emerge as a beacon of light, guiding his people from the shadows into a future rewritten by grace? As Nebuchadnezzar's heart raced, a tension hung palpably in the air, the thrill of his declaration clashing with the gravity of uncertainty among the gathered court. Silence enveloped the throne room, each minute stretching into an eternity, lost in the weight of expectation. Whispers danced among the ministers, skepticism and curiosity pirouetting side by side, while Nebuchadnezzar's resolve steadied him from within. "Let us not shy away from the truth," he spoke, his voice unwavering this time. "Our kingdom flourished, but many among us suffered in silence. It is these voices that I seek to amplify, this burden I strive to lift." With his hands resting against the cool surface of the throne, he felt the cool stone against his skin, grounding him in the midst of the stirring storm. "But I do not wish to walk this path alone. I turn to you, my advisors and servants. Help me choose the way of compassion." At that moment, Belteshazzar stepped closer, his brow furrowing in thought. "Your Majesty, to lead in compassion is admirable, yet it is essential to take the first steps among the people, the ones who have lost faith in the crown, those who toil daily in the fields." His voice resonated with gravel but carried a note of excitement, blending deep concern with a glimmer of hope. Nebuchadnezzar nodded, understanding dawning like the first light of dawn breaking through the haze. He envisaged a kingdom where every heart, regardless of status, could find peace and purpose. "Then we must visit the towns, the marketplaces, the very core of our land. We must listen and learn from those who feel unseen." As his words drifted through the air, they sparked a flicker of hope within the assembly, a dull ache transforming into a bright ember of anticipation. Yet with this vision came the daunting prospect of exposing his own vulnerabilities to those he ruled. Would they embrace this new path, or would they view him as the frail king of yore, a monarch who merely floundered among his failings? The hall erupted in hushed discussions, yet from the cacophony emerged one voice, an elder who had served the kingdom faithfully for decades. His weathered visage softened as he raised a trembling hand. "O king, wisdom lurks in the hearts of the humble. Venture forth among the people, and may you carry with you the spirit of a servant rather than a lord. Seek the broken and the weary, they hold within them the true essence of your reign." Nebuchadnezzar felt a swell of gratitude but also the sharp edge of fear. What if this venture unmasked his ignorance or unearthed discomfort that had long since settled beneath the surface? As thoughts swirled like autumn leaves in a gusty wind, he turned to gaze out of the grand palace windows, seeking solace in the vast expanse of the world beyond. There lay the kingdom he had sought to conquer, its people struggling under the weight of expectation and fear. Could he truly carry the burden of their desire for change? In that moment, a question emerged, whispering with its velvet touch: how does one convert insight into genuine transformation when the shadow of the past looms large over the heart? As Nebuchadnezzar lingered in this moment of reflection, he could feel the pulse of a greater truth thrumming through his very being, the conviction that the change he sought could only begin by embracing the vulnerability within himself. It would be an arduous path, marked by uncertainty, guided only by the flickering flame of faith. And yet, even as the first intimations of action began to stir his spirit, the unsettling shadow of doubt lingered on the horizon. Could a king, once steeped in the corrosive nature of power, truly muster the strength to dismantle the very throne that had perpetuated his ego? Would his journey of humility cocoon him in grace, or would it plunge him deeper into the recesses of despair? The path remained veiled, and the ripples of inquiry pressed against the shores of his mind, whispering the probing question that looked beyond the throne and into the heart of man. As dawn broke over Babylon, streaks of gold brushed against the horizon, heralding not just another day but a pivotal change. Nebuchadnezzar stirred in his chamber, the echoes of his conversations from the night before still reverberating within him. He rose from his bed, the weight of his crown felt heavier than usual, pressing against a heart that yearned for lightness. He dressed in simple linen, a choice that felt foreign yet right. Each thread woven into the garment reminded him of the people he wished to meet, the laborers, the dreamers, and the weary souls whose voices had long been silenced. Anxiety tingled at the edges of his courage. What would he find? Wisdom? Anger? Disillusionment? As he stepped out, his advisors awaited, somber and expectant. Belteshazzar approached with tentative steps, a hint of concern etching his features. "Your Majesty, are you prepared for today? The people may not greet you with the enthusiasm you hoped for." "Enthusiasm is not what I seek, Belteshazzar. I seek truth." The certainty in his voice surprised them all, even Nebuchadnezzar himself. But as they began their journey from the lofty palace to the bustling heart of Babylon, doubt crept back in, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. What if there was nothing but contempt waiting for him? The thought seated itself like a cold stone at the base of his stomach. They traveled through winding streets, the smell of fresh bread mingling with the cries of merchants hawking their wares. Laughter echoed from a group of children playing near a fountain, their innocence a stark contrast to the cares of their parents, who labored under the watchful eyes of the king's soldiers. Nebuchadnezzar's heart swelled with conflicting emotions: joy and sorrow, hope and despair. Why do we keep looking to kings and rulers? An elderly woman suddenly spoke, breaking the spell of his introspection. She stood amidst the crowd, her sturdy frame defying the years. You pursue truth, but is your heart ready to receive it? Many have come, promising change, only to let us down. Stung by her words, Nebuchadnezzar met her gaze, realizing that there was a wisdom in her skepticism that resonated deeply. I am not here to promise, he replied, momentarily forgetting his royal entitlements. I am here to listen. The murmurs swelled around him, a mixture of shock and curiosity. He sensed a crack forming in the barrier of mistrust, yet the atmosphere still crackled with suspicion. What makes you different? A young man shouted, his visage filled with defiance. You've lived a life of luxury while we scrape by. What could you possibly know of our struggles? His words hung heavy in the air. The young man's indignation sparked a fire in others, igniting voices long restrained. Nebuchadnezzar took a step closer, feeling their intensity spark a flame within him. I know that my past is marked by power, but together, we must address a future shaped by care. But the truth was frail, teetering on a precipice of vulnerability. Could he withstand the scrutiny of a kingdom that was just beginning to awaken? As silence draped itself over the gathered crowd, Nebuchadnezzar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of their gazes pierce through his armor. In this moment, something shifted deep within him, a stirring that felt both terrifying and liberating. The pulse of hope surged anew as the lingering shadows of doubt tentatively receded. He remembered the elder's encouragement, his plea to wear the spirit of a servant. Tell me your burdens, he urged, his voice gaining momentum. I will carry them with you. The crowd shifted, the air thick with anticipation. Would they share their stories, the hidden pains that had long been locked away? Or would they turn away from the king who dared to approach their shadows? In the depths of silence, Nebuchadnezzar found his own question rising to the surface, one that lingered like a fragrance yet to be revealed. What if the path to earn the trust of a people lay not just in regularity and routine, but in the raw honesty of shared humanity? As doubt whispered through the gathering, did they sense the echo of his transformation that had only just begun? Would the pages of this chapter unfold into redemption, or would the past strike back with its bitter armament? The air buzzed with tension as Nebuchadnezzar stood amidst the crowd, the weight of their expectations pressing down upon him even heavier than his crown. Silence enveloped them, the kind that feels as though it could shatter at the slightest breath. Every heartbeat resonated, echoing a collective anticipation that pivoted on his next words. Were they ready to share their burdens, or would the walls they had built remain fortified against him? After what felt like an eternity, a woman with weary eyes stepped forward. Her hands trembled slightly, revealing not just the frailty of age, but a lifetime of struggles. She cleared her throat, and amidst the creases of her weathered face, Nebuchadnezzar saw the hope that flickered like a distant star. You speak of listening, she began, her voice quavering but resolute. Do you know what it means to lose everything? To wake up each morning knowing that your family may go hungry? Can you truly bear the weight of our despair? A question laden with challenge, and Nebuchadnezzar felt the truth of her words pierce into the fortress he had erected around his heart. I cannot claim to fully understand your experience, he answered, his voice softening. But I am here, receptive to the stories that shape you. Let me see the world through your lens. One by one, they began to rise, each voice a thread weaving into a tapestry of pain and resilience. A father spoke of his son, taken to serve in a war that felt both endless and needless. A mother shared how her hopes for a better life for her children had crumbled like the walls around them. A young woman described the dreams that had evaporated, washed away by a relentless tide of sorrow. With each testimony, the king felt a crack forming in the foundation of his previously unyielding resolve. Their voices were filled with a raw honesty that had been absent in his court. For too long he had overlooked the plight of his people, focusing only on grandeur and glory. In the shadows of his own heart, he began to feel the scratches of regret, whispering to him that perhaps he had strayed too far from the virtues of compassion and understanding, but with every revelation that emerged, so too did fear. What if he extended his hand and they turned away? What if, in his pursuit to connect, he only amplified the wounds that still throbbed? With trepidation flickering in his chest, he called for silence once more. "These wounds you carry," he said, "they are not just yours. They form the marrow of this great city, and as your king, I am bound to carry them too." The crowd was quiet again, yet Nebuchadnezzar could feel a swell of energy rising from their collective spirit. The fragrance of vulnerability filled the air, mingling with the sense of bread and the distant sound of laughter from children playing nearby. He noticed that their faces, though lined with suffering, bore traces of hope, awakened by the reclaiming of their voices. Suddenly, a young boy appeared, a mere spectre amid the towering forms of adults. He grasped a withered doll close to his chest, his expression a mixture of innocence and profound understanding. "King Nebuchadnezzar," he piped up, piercing through the heavy atmosphere. "Will you make a wish with us? Will you speak for those who cannot? Maybe that can change things." Nebuchadnezzar knelt before the boy, drawn into the light in his eyes. "What is your wish, child?" he asked, captivated by the earnestness radiating from him. "To be heard," he replied simply. "Not just today, but every day," the words lingered in the air like an unfulfilled prayer. Nebuchadnezzar found himself grappling with the little boy's request, wondering how to embody such an act of profound significance. What if each of these stories held a key to something he had long overlooked? What genuine connection awaited him if he mustered the courage to bear their burdens and share his own? As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the crowd, Nebuchadnezzar realized he had a choice: to distance himself in fear or to draw closer in understanding. The lingering question weighed on him, echoing in the recesses of his mind. Was he truly ready to embrace the overwhelming truth of a kingdom in pain, even if it exposed his own vulnerabilities in the process? What would it mean for him, both as a ruler and a man, to stand shoulder to shoulder with those he once regarded as mere subjects? As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Nebuchadnezzar and his people blossomed like spring flowers after a long winter. He found himself returning to the gathering place at the heart of the city, a raw and unfiltered conversation unfolding with every visit. Each face reflected the multitude of human emotions: joy, sorrow, fear, aspiration, and it was amid these shared confessions that the king began to find a semblance of clarity. The stories weighed upon his heart, each one a heavy stone that added to the stack of realization he was building. With every encounter, he unraveled layers of his own soul that had long been encased in elitism and grandeur. The people did not merely want to be heard, they yearned for acknowledgement and recognition of their struggles, a chance to unearth the humanity buried beneath societal roles and power dynamics. One afternoon, as the sun cast a golden hue upon the cobblestones, a group of elders arrived with solemn faces. They approached Nebuchadnezzar with the stories of those who had lost faith not only in their ruler but in themselves. "Your Majesty, we come not to burden you, but to invite you into the depths of our despair," the eldest spoke, his voice wavering as if each word carried the weight of generations. "Many have lost hope. Our hearts have grown weary. We fear that we are but shadows in the grand design of your reign." The king listened, the gravity of their pain palpable in the silence that followed. To be a shadow, he pondered aloud, is to forget one's reflection. The elders exchanged glances, intrigued by his words. But what if the shadows could reclaim their shape? What if we unveiled the truths hidden in the dark? Conversations continued to flourish, revealing not just the wounds of the past but also illuminating the dreams that had been put aside. Nebuchadnezzar felt a stirring within him, a desire to cultivate change that resonated beyond the walls of palaces and courts. Often, he found himself yearning to reweave the fabric of his kingdom, intertwining strength with humility, authority with empathy. As he walked through the streets, absorbing both the struggles and triumphs of his people, a thought began to gnaw at him, deeper than the regrets he had faced. What if accepting the narratives of others meant confronting his own truth? Would he dare to voice the vulnerabilities he had long buried beneath the weight of his crown? And as doubts crept in, Nebuchadnezzar felt like a vessel afloat in a raging sea, resilient yet terrified of the tides threatening to consume him whole. One evening, as he sat atop his palace steps, the sky painted with swirls of orange and purple, a reflective moment washed over him. He beheld the city before him, the laughter of children, the whispers of lovers, the clamor of market stalls, all life abundant and intertwined. Yet, could he truly claim kinship with this life while his own heart remained guarded? He gazed at the horizon and surrendered to the current of his thoughts, wondering about the boy with the doll and how such a simple wish could transform the essence of a kingdom. What if his greatest strength lay not on the battlefield but in the art of listening? What if the final act of a ruler meant not issuing decrees but embracing his people's truths as his own? As night descended, casting a blanket of stars above, he felt an urgent prompting within. To change is to be reborn, he reflected quietly. Is it too late to seek forgiveness, not from them but from myself? A sense of humility enveloped him, yet a question persisted, echoing through the chambers of his mind. What would it require of him to truly repent for his past indifference, and would he still feel worthy of his kingship if he embraced the vulnerability of the human experience? As dawn broke over Babylon, the sun poured its golden essence into the king's chambers, illuminating the heavy curtains that had draped in shadow for far too long. King Nebuchadnezzar stirred from a restless sleep, his thoughts tangled with the echoes of his journey. The stars from the night before had whispered revelations into his heart, nudging him toward a truth he could no longer deny. Today would mark the beginning of a new chapter, not just for him as a ruler but for his entire kingdom. Rising from his bed, he dressed with care, keeping his attire simple, echoing the humility he sought to embody. As he gazed into the bronze mirror, he found not just the reflection of a king, but of a man ready to confront the scars of his past. Stepping out into the light, he felt a mix of trepidation and fortitude as he descended the grand staircase that led to the throne room, where his ministers awaited not only his presence but the revelation of actions stemming from his newfound resolve. When Nebuchadnezzar entered, the atmosphere shifted, the air thick with unspoken anticipation. His advisors, usually steeped in their aspirations and ambitions, now stood rooted in varying degrees of confusion and respect. The thrill of concern hung around them like the dense fog of dawn, a reminder that change carries weighty consequences. With a steady heart, he approached his throne, yet he felt no inclination to sit upon it today. Instead, he gestured for his advisors to gather close. "I stand before you not merely as your king," he began, his voice firm but laced with sincerity, "but as a fellow wanderer seeking to find the path that will heal not just our kingdom, but my soul." Gasps rippled through the assembly, but he pressed on, feeling more alive in this moment than he had ever felt in the glories of his past. "The shadows of my rule have concealed not just the cries of my people but have cast a pall over my own heart. I have sought power at the cost of compassion, and today, I seek to set a new course." That he paused, taking a breath to anchor himself amid the swirling emotions tethered to his confession. "Let it be known that my reign will not reflect the hubris of old, but the glory found in unity, humility, and service to the people." His ministers exchanged glances, doubt wrestling with hope. Nebuchadnezzar continued, "I will no longer command from a distance. I will walk the streets, hear your stories, and share in your burdens. Let today be marked as the first step toward a kingdom awakened to its truths." The tension in the room began to dissipate, transformed by his declaration, a truth uttered not through the lens of authority but through the embrace of vulnerability. "My first act as your humble king," he declared, "will be to extend my hand to the common folk, to validate their struggles, to listen to their needs. We will construct a community, a foundation built on understanding, empathy, and respect." What followed was a stillness vibrating with something extraordinary, an opportunity for grace to blossom in the cracks of their disillusionment. Unexpectedly, Belteshazzar stepped forward, his brow knitted with emotions swirling between skepticism and encouragement. "Your Majesty," he said, voice steady, "to walk among the people will indeed require fortitude. They may resist you, but there are also many who yearn for transformation. If you wish to penetrate their hearts, you must be genuine in your approach. The words landed deeply, stirring within Nebuchadnezzar an echo of the night spent beneath the stars, whispering promises of renewal. I will lead with sincerity, he replied, determination burning bright. I will demonstrate with actions that back my words. Thus, he set out into the city's labyrinthine streets, flanked by a small group of trusted advisors who had witnessed the metamorphosis brewing within him. As they walked, the bustling life of Babylon unfolded around them. The scents of spices and freshly baked bread filled the air, mingling with laughter and shouts of merchants selling their wares. This tapestry of life, vibrant and pulsating, reminded him of the richness he had overlooked. As they approached the marketplace, the crowd began to take notice of the king's presence, confusion giving way to whispers. What was he doing here, stepping among those who had only known him as a distant figurehead? A ripple of uncertainty folded over the gathering before him. Determined to bridge the chasm, Nebuchadnezzar raised a hand, urging the crowd to quiet. People of Babylon, he called out, his voice rising above the din, I seek not to command, but to connect. My heart has awoken to the truth of our shared humanity, and I want to hear your stories, your joys, your sorrows. For too long, I have lived in a palace, yet today I choose to share in your lives. The crowd remained quiet, their gazes a blend of surprise and scrutiny. A young woman, her face marked by hardship, emerged from the throng. Do you truly wish to hear our stories, O king? She asked, her tone a mixture of hope and skepticism. Yes, he affirmed, stepping closer, drawn to her sincerity. I yearn to understand what it means to be part of this collective we call home. Let your voices guide me. At that moment, the floodgates opened. A chorus of voices began to rise, each story unique yet interwoven with the threads of pain and perseverance. A father spoke of the labor that brought little reward, a mother lamented the loss of her children to war. A perspective began to kindle in Nebuchadnezzar's heart, a realization that the stories of his people mirrored the shadows of his own life, his own fears and failures. As day turned to dusk, he listened intently, feeling each narrative paint the tapestry of empathy within him. He felt the weight of his crown lessen, replaced by a sense of purpose tied to each life he encountered. When the last words faded into the twilight, Nebuchadnezzar found himself stirring with unrestrained emotion. In hearing your stories, he spoke, his heart reverberating with sincerity, I recognize my failures have cost you dearly. I cannot undo the past, but I promise to nurture a future where your voices are elevated, and kindness flows like the rivers. In that sacred moment, he glimpsed the potential for transformation not just for himself, but for all of Babylon. He had stumbled upon the realization that within the act of listening, the roots of compassion take hold, allowing humanity to thrive amid adversity. But Nebuchadnezzar also understood the journey ahead would not be free from resistance, there would be those unwilling to accept his change. With this knowledge, he resolved to anchor himself in humility, remembering that if he was to lead not from the throne but from the hearts of his people, he would need continuous reflection and commitment to genuine engagement. Days morphed into weeks, and the king emerged as not just a ruler but a steward of hearts. The vibrant pulse of Babylon thrummed in harmony with the hope that began to fill its very streets. Mutual respect blossomed, drawing people together, a city once fragmented now marked by unity. Nebuchadnezzar's crown glimmered not from the fabric of royalty but from the glow of shared experiences and a promise of compassion extended. Time passed, shaping their experiences into stories of resilience. The people who had once gazed at him with apprehension now looked upon him with a blend of respect and admiration, mingled with the recognition of their own stories entwining with that of their kings. And within this shared journey, Nebuchadnezzar found solace and strength, along with a profound connection to something greater, the divine call to serve with grace. The transformation echoed beyond the city walls, inspiring neighboring lands to seek their own paths of healing and understanding. Thus, the mighty Nebuchadnezzar became not just a historical figure, but a living testament to the power of humility, reconciliation, and the enduring journey towards spiritual awakening. In the years that followed, the name Nebuchadnezzar became synonymous with the kingdom's renaissance, a renewed spirit heralded by the understanding that true royalty is born not of power and fear, but of compassion and love. His final moment was not governed by rulers or conquests, but by a king who chose to embrace his humanity, thereby unleashing a wave of grace that transcended time itself, a lasting legacy etched into the very fabric of their identity. And so, as one looks to the skies where stars twinkled in memory, they also see the rays of hope illuminating the path that rises from the ashes of despair, reminding us all that within each heart lies the potential for transformation and the grace to reconnect with the boundless horizons of faith and trust.